I've said that in order to edit a design, it needs to be in wireframe. So what happens if you don't start with a wireframe file? What if you're just dealing with lettering or a stitch file? How do I get from those to something wireframe that I can edit? That's what we're going to look at now in converting to wireframe. If I look at an expanded design and I expand this out, I only have expanded data. This is the same for pretty much any stitch file that you're dealing with. But if I wanted to edit the density of these pairs or the shape of these pairs, I would want to have this in a wireframe form. Now, depending on the level of software that you may have the ability to convert these expanded objects into wireframe objects. To do that, select the element, or in this case, the color or the expanded data, right-click on it, go to Operations, and go Convert Object to Wireframe. When I do that, it will expand it out into all the objects that make it up. So what DesignShop does is it goes through and it looks at all the different stitch types. Is it a series of stitches going one after the other? Then that's probably a walk. Is it a series of those going back and forth? Then it's probably a fill. Does it make quick changes back and forth without needle penetrations in the middle? Then it's probably a satin. So it's making its best estimate as to what these elements are and then creating from that what those wireframe elements would be. Once we have this expanded out, then I can select those elements and I could change my density to something crazy so we can see it on screen. That was a little crazier than I meant to go. Let's go to 20. So you can change those densities, you can change those settings, and if I needed to, I could even change the shape of that element and it would fill in those stitches. A couple of things I want you to be aware of when you're converting these elements. This is just a filled circle. It starts here and it ends here, which means as I'm sewing this out, it is going to travel up and fill down. When it gets to this point, it's going to travel down and then fill back up so that it can exit where we're asking. Now this is a wireframe file, it's an OFM. If I were to save this as, let me get back to my sample designs. If I were to save this as a stitch file, I've already done this once, let me do it again. And then if I were to open that up, let's open up that stitch file and take a look at it. So this is the same circle, the same stitches, same everything, but as I sew this out, you'll notice it's traveling up, filling back down, travels down, and then fills back up, just like the other one. If I convert this, so select it, right-click, Operations, Convert to Wireframe, instead of being a circle, it will be those segments. It will be the travel stitch, the top fill, the travel stitch back down, and the bottom fill. So because we had those travel stitches and because it was moving from one point, filling for a little bit, and then traveling down and filling another piece, it is not figuring out that all of those equal a circle. It just knows that this is a simple fill and this is a simple fill, and there are walk stitches in between them. So converting to wireframe may not get you back to what the digitizer had originally, but it will get you to something that you can edit. For lettering, we can do a similar thing. If I had these two lettering segments and I wanted to create almost a brand out of it, I could move these over, line this up, and if I liked the look of this, I'd be pretty good. However, if I wanted to remove this little tail of the L, this little foot here that's kind of sticking out inside the B, I've got lettering right now, and that would get a little bit difficult to do. So let me move this B out of the way, and let me convert this L, this lettering segment, to wireframe. So I'm going to do the same thing. I have it selected, I right-click on it, I go to Operations, and I go to Convert Object to Wireframe. And again, this is a level-dependent feature. This may or may not be in your software, depending on the level that you purchased. Convert it to wireframe, it's going to break it apart into all those pieces that make it up. So that travel stitch, and then a little column, another travel, a column. And so all of those are doing okay, and all of those are coming together to create that shape of that L, but it is no longer a lettering segment. It is no longer lettering. I can't go in and change the spelling of it. They are just the shapes that make it up. This is the piece that I don't love, so I'm going to remove it. But I want to keep some of it. So I can select at this point, and I can hit delete on my keyboard, and it will go away. I can select at this point and I can hit delete on my keyboard and it will go away. Now the reason it is taking the pair with it is because it's a column 1, and column 1 works in pairs of points. So whatever I do to one, the other one will kind of follow suit. So I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. It's going to go away. I've broken that apart, and so now I have just this piece. I can select that B. I can overlap it. And now let's center that up on screen. And now I have these elements here working just like I want them to look. One last thing I would want to consider is if I am editing these separately, I would want to go back in to my properties and I would want to look and make sure that I at least have a tie off, and this time I do, so I'm good. I want to make sure whenever I'm splitting those elements apart and breaking them apart into the pieces that make them up, I want to make sure I have a tie off whenever I'm ending before a trim. That way my stitches don't unravel. But you've got the ability to take a expanded or a stitch file and convert it to wireframe. You've got the ability to do the same thing with lettering, which makes it into more editable pieces. And so you've got a few tools to get those less than editable designs into a more editable format for you.